Each week, we pick a different topic in illustration, and we battle it out. We fight, then we hug, kiss, and make up. We don't actually do that, but figuratively.
Yes, figuratively. Thank goodness.
Each time, you're going to learn something brand new.
Okay. Yeah, we knocked that one out. It's off to a great start. Let's did you said you had some follow-up from last week or from the last episode, or you didn't?
Who are you talking to?
Lee did. No. Let's just start over.
Just start over. It's terrible.
World with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White. Sorry.
It's not like we haven't done this in a long time.
81 times we've done this before.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. We've published somewhere around 50 or 75 books between us all, and we've all taught illustration at universities.
Each week we pick a different topic in illustration. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we agree, but each time you're going to learn something brand spanking new.
All right. That sounds great. It's like we've been doing it 82 times.
We just messed up.
We should let our audience know.
We just messed up 3 times. So there you go.
You think we'd be able to knock this out?
Now, when we say we messed up, wasn't that you and Lee messed up?
Collectively.
I actually didn't mess up at all. It was, I'll put it right on Lee all 3 times.
I'm bouncing it off me and sticking it to Will.
All right. This week, we've got more questions from our listeners, and we always appreciate these questions. They make doing this podcast a lot of fun for us because it's great to kind of hear what you guys are dealing with, what kind of unique scenarios you have that our experience can kind of shed some light on. And so we're just going to dig right down into it. If you do have a question, go to SVSLearn.com, click on the podcast tab at the top, the little link, podcast. And then there you'll be taken to our podcast page. And there's just a button there that says got a question. You can click on that and then fill out a form and submit your question. So we appreciate that as always. And we're trying to get through these as best as we can. We always say if it's an emergency, dial 911 first. Don't us, because it'll be, our turnaround time isn't quite that fast. No, but if you do have like a very pertinent, time-sensitive question for us, shoot us an email and we'll get to that question through email as best we can. But if not, if it's just sort of general, something you want to know, and it's a question you think would be good for the podcast, go ahead and ask us here and we'll get to it. So first question comes from Carol, and her subject line says, what is Lee's patented pathway to spectacular success? A lot of alliteration in that one. Your patented pathway to spectacular success. She says in an episode in year 1 of your podcast, Lee talked at length about how he, an older, less experienced student, quickly caught up and leveled up in art school. I keep listening to old episodes over and over and cannot find this moment, but it was brilliant and very specific and strategic. Something about how he pushed himself and sought out and acted on feedback. Please, Lee, I'm begging you, save me from torturing myself trying to find this moment and tell this story again. I don't know.
You have to figure out how to tell that lie again and make it match.
No, there's no way it's going to match. We're free flowing here. I don't have a list of these things, so it could be totally different this time.
Could be totally different, but I also... I think it was an episode. If it wasn't, it may have been a critique arena that we did, or a Third Thursday or something. So for the sake of this listener and for us, let's just go through it again. Like, tell us about how you did it. How old were you when you went into art school, and how you leveled up and did all that stuff?
I was 30 when I started art school, and I had never taken an art class before. And then, I find myself sitting in Art Center around all the every single person there, in my opinion, is the best person in their class as they went through high school and all the other grades and stuff.
Right.
Now they're all the best people are congregated in one room, and then there's me. And so I'll never forget that feeling of being there, and everybody's talking about materials and what they like to do, what they like to draw, what they like to paint, how they get through a painting. I had nothing to add to these conversations. Like, I didn't even know what they're talking about. I didn't have any techniques. In a way, I think that was one of the best things that could have ever happened, because I didn't have any bad habits. Now fast forwarding to years later as a teacher, it's one of the biggest obstacles, I think, in the way of a lot of students is, if you've ever heard the Buddhist saying, you can't learn anything because your cup's already full.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of art students come to class. Oh, I don't want to learn this. I do want to learn this, but I want to learn it in this specific way. And it's just so detrimental. So that was my first step, is in the foundation. I really listened to what the teacher was trying to teach, not just the subject matter. And that's an important, I think, distinction, but what are they trying to teach? Why am I learning this thing? And then really just giving myself into that process. That was and I do want to stress, that was my approach in only the foundation, because I did change it as I went through school. But so, you're in perspective class, you're in foundation class, we had one class that was, I minored in industrial design, and the whole term, all we did is on oversized paper, draw shapes, and then we'd have to cast the shadow on the shapes and make sure the shapes were perfect in relationship to perspective and stuff. It was really hard and really boring. But I just kind of gave myself over to it. Like, okay, I don't understand the whole context of why we're doing this, but I'm going to just give myself to it. And then I'd ask, okay, how does that relate to the things I'm learning in figure drawing? Is there some overlap there? And so I took a really critical approach I tried to kind of back up and look at how each thing integrated together. And again, as a teacher now, I see some students do that. I see a lot of students don't do that. They'll learn one thing in one class and it'll be slightly rephrased in another class, and they won't make the connection that it's the same principle.
Right.
That makes sense. And so, I'd really try to see how these things overlap, even going as far as, like, I remember my first or second term, I had to take a typography class because graphic design is a big component in the school. And we had to hand draw fonts and typeface and stuff like that. I was just like, how does this relate? And then I just turned it into shapes. And what the study of typography really was, a study of positive and negative shapes and how those shapes relate to each other. Yeah. And my figure drawing got instantly better as I was drawing. Each week we would have a different font that we would have to learn, and you'd have to do them all by hand. And my figure drawing got a lot better because of the type class and because I was able to see that common denominator.
Yeah.
And then the next thing in the foundation, I would try to see those overlaps, see how it applied to the whole, and then ask myself, can I do this in a more efficient way? And especially with figure drawing, I found a much, much faster and more efficient way of getting to the end result quicker. So to the point where I could draw almost pretty realistic figures within, if I had 3 minutes, that was enough to almost look like a finished figure.
Wow.
I should show you guys some of the sketches from back then. I still have a little portfolio of them. I never show them because that's just not what I do anymore. But
right.
And I couldn't do it now.
It'd be interesting to see your figure drawing because your style is so stylized and just texture and shape based. To see,
I'll pull them up during this podcast. When we get to the next question, I'll share them with you guys on the screen. But anyway, is there a more efficient way to do it? And that was always a big question. It's like, can I combine these things? How does these mediums work? And I always found myself questioning the materials too. So I had some of my friends in school, they had their technique when they got to school. They did that technique in school, and then they still have that technique now. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. It just wasn't what I did. I would try to mix them together. They would end up disastrous. But sometimes they would be like, oh, wow, cool texture all of a sudden happened, or a really interesting mark or something, because I was just combining. I even made my own paints for a little while in school. because I never liked, acrylic dries super fast, oil dries super slow. I really wanted something that just gives me like 20 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. Not 3 days and not 3 minutes. Like, is there anything in between those two?
Right.
So I tried to make my own paints.
That's too much to ask.
Yeah. I built an oven to heat paint. Anyway, a lot of stuff. But go ahead.
I was going to ask, you're 30. What happened in your 20s that you're like, hey, let's just drop everything and do art school? Were you married then, or were you and Lisa?
No, I had just met what became my wife. We had just met, just started dating, and she was there with me when I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do some paintings. And she's like, what? I mean, like, there's no reference point for that.
Yeah.
So she was with me when I went to the art store and bought a bunch of these big canvases. It's just funny to me looking back on it that I didn't think that I would just like do a couple of drawings, like small. I bought huge canvases,
right,
and went straight in. No sketch or anything. Just started painting.
Like Picasso.
Yeah, I guess so. And then I started showing those same paintings. Like, it was just almost instantaneous.
Please, I have this vision of Lee at the art store. He's just overburdened with canvases, brushes, paints, and he's like, "Ma'am, where's the berets and the smocks, please?"
Yeah, is there a new artist package that I can get that I just can't? Comes with a little mustache and a beret. Maybe one of those long cigarette holders that
right.
Yeah, it was sorry, I got a cold and I'm kind of coughing. It was just weird that I just don't know. I don't know what started that whole thing of but there was no precedent for it. I mean, at all. And then I just immediately went to work. And once I started doing it, again, I think we talked about this on one of the most recent podcasts, that the positive feedback that I got immediately really fueled that. Like if nobody liked them or nobody said anything, I probably just would have put them in my garage like everybody else does and gone about my business. But
right.
I got enough of a response where I was like, okay, there's something here, I think. And so move forward with it. Anyway, as I got through with the foundation and I was done with that, I moved on at Art Center about halfway through. You're done with the foundation. And in this particular school, you are left to sink or swim. I mean, like from the last 2 years, if you don't come up with what you're doing, you would literally not do any work. The teachers are not saying, okay, you're going to draw a spaceship and I need 5 views. I mean, that's sort of the common way of teaching a class. At this school, they're like, all right, you got some skills. What do you want to do? And by the end of it, everybody ends up very specific because you had to make those really, really intensely personal choices on what the projects even are. And so I tried to make each thing, like if we did get like some loose parameters, I would just kind of steer it to where I was interested in and see how I felt during the foundation. Like, I got really good at figure drawing, but I knew that figure drawing wasn't something that fulfilled me. So I kept asking myself, am I enjoying this? Is this something that comes naturally to me? I just kept asking those questions and kept diving deeper and asking myself how I feel when I do it. What's the response I'm getting? I would always pay attention to when we do those kind of assignments, everybody's kind of personal take on stuff. People would put them up on the little panel, whatever, lined up next to each other. And like the students would always gather around certain work. And so I would always bring my sketchbook over there and I would say, okay, what is it about this work? I'd take a picture of it if I could. So what is it about this work why are people gathering around it? Is it the composition? Is it the storytelling? Is it the characters? And I'd try to just kind of almost reverse engineer these paintings. And then I would try to bring that in the next time. I tried to always be, my little criteria for myself is, in every class, I want to be at least the top 5 by the time the class ends, even if I'm not good at that subject. By the end, I want to be top 5. And if it's an illustration in an area where I'm sort of moving, I want to be top 3. And so that's how I would gauge it, is like, not the grade. Everybody gets an A in art school. But the reaction. Are people responding to the work? And if they weren't, I'd go back at it and say, okay, why are they not responding to the work? And how am I responding to the work too? I don't want to just do something everybody likes, but I'm hating. So I don't know. That's how I did it, and just continually did that to the point where you end up with what is your work. At the end, like I said, if you do that enough, you ask yourself enough questions, you can't help but have your own quote unquote style and your own direction.
Now, have you been back to Art Center? Is it still pretty much the same way? Like last 2 years, it's sink or swim, or is it a little bit more guided now?
Nope. It's a school for intensely serious people, I think. And I think every school doesn't follow that model. And so some people may need the assignments, and you wouldn't want to go to a school like this.
Right.
I liked it.
What were when I think of Art Center, I think of concept artists, vehicle designers, product designers, some graphic designers, photographers, like film or not really film, but more like motionography. I don't really think of illustration. Or children's books, but I know of two amazing artists, you and Dan Santat, who graduated from Art Center.
Peter Brown, that's right. Jamie Zollers.
Okay, so what was going on there?
David Shannon.
Is that something that
so
continues on? Is it still spitting out illustrators, or is that something that?
It absolutely is. I mean, if you look to the lineage of children's books, I mean, you look to Caldecott winners, and there's a bunch of them mixed in there. That's one of the ingredient. That's why I wanted to focus on that school in particular, is because the graduates get results, and it's not just for illustration like that. But if you look at all the fields that go into the training at a school like that, they end up as you don't get production artists out of a school like that. You end up with the art director. You know what I mean? People making films. I'll be walking down the hallway. I'll never forget it. Actually, walking down the hallways, and like you pass somebody who's carrying like a fully functioning robot. And then that's an industrial design or vehicle design student. The next person's test driving a hovercraft or something in the parking lot. I mean, it's just and it was just filled with, it was almost like the Hogwarts, I guess, of artists.
Yeah.
Very intense place though.
Yeah,
for sure.
Backstabbing. Was there a lot of backstabbing?
No, but I will say this, and it's one of the things that I didn't like about it. There wasn't a lot of sharing. And so sometimes I'd see people that either pulled off a painting with a style that I liked or a technique that I liked, and I'd ask, and everybody's very protective. Like, I don't want to share my secret sauce.
Right.
And I never had that. I'll share step by step exactly what I do, and see how, the good illustrators, I think, do that.
Just to give my perspective on art school too, one of the things that I did when I was studying art, and I wasn't in the school environment very long, but when I was in that environment, one of my things I did is I went in knowing what I wanted to get out of that class, which was a particular portfolio piece, a particular understanding or style. And regardless of what the assignment was, I would make something that fit like my agenda. Right. So I remember one time I totally failed an assignment. It was to do a portrait of yourself as an animal. And I was like, well, I need an environment piece. So I made an environment, but there was a character in the foreground that was me as an animal. So I was like trying to shoehorn that assignment into something that I needed for my portfolio. And my teacher was like, fine, whatever, you didn't do it, but I understand why you did it. So I don't remember getting bad grades or anything, but it was like you have to think about what you really need as an artist. And then that kind of goes against your thing, where you should come in with an empty cup. So,
well, I think it's two separate things. It's the beginning when you're in the foundation is the empty cup, but then you switch to the other model, and that's why I want to really stress there's two different modes of operating, and you can't stay empty. You have to make decisions at some. And I
think for me, I'll just finish with this. For me, I started taking art training like kind of serious in 7th grade when I could take an art class at school, like an hour devoted to art. And so all of the stuff you learn in junior high and high school, which is still life drawing, perspective drawing, contour, and even like some of the weird craft stuff like clay, sculpting with clay and pottery and a couple of these other things. I was like really cup empty type of approach to there. Like I was doing all that stuff. By the time I graduated, I was like, I want to be a concept artist. I want to, make comic books. I want to do anything that does that. So I was really shoehorning these assignments into the thing that I wanted to do. What were you going to say, Will?
Well, and you guys both came in with different, you guys are opposites really, right? Like I was more like Lee. I had drawn and painted my whole life, but I was nowhere near what you described where you were. And so I think for the average person listening, you have to, in a way, you need to be able to triage yourself and know where you're starting to be able to know what to try to get out of school. Because I can tell you from my time teaching in art school that one of the biggest things, but this is an average because it wouldn't have been true for you. One of the biggest limiters is a student that comes in and says, I want to work in this market and I want, it's going to be manga and I don't need these certain skills that you're trying to teach.
Right.
Because I'm not going to use those. And that's the recipe for slowing down or pretty much eliminating the possibility of success. So when this person asks this question, like, how do you speed it up? For most people, it would be staying open. And like what Lee said, trying to figure out why the teacher's teaching the thing that they're teaching. Right. But another skill, I would say, is trying to figure out if your teacher is good.
Absolutely.
Because if you followed every single teacher, I can guarantee you, you'd waste a lot of time. Because unfortunately, now it depends on what school you go to. I would imagine in art school or in art center and like schools like Ringling, serious art schools, they're not going to have teachers that can't do.
No way, man. There's a bunch of teachers that can't do.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, surprising.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. You got to find, and that's why it's important to really research your teachers, in my opinion, and find what they're doing. I remember I was in a figure drawing class, and this one teacher, I'd come from another school in LA that was strictly for figure drawing, and the teachers demoed and all that stuff, and it was awesome. I would take a couple of those classes simultaneously with Art Center, and they're really good at demoing. My teacher at Art Center would never do a demo. And I was struggling with drawing this leg and how this foot came into the leg. And so finally, I wasn't trying to make her look bad. I just needed help. And she came over and I was like, you just got to show me how to do it. So I held out the charcoal pencil, she sits down at the easel, and all of a sudden I sort of called her out because everybody's like now gathered around, and she butchered it. Butchered it. And so you could feel sort of the air go out of the room, like, like you got to step up and do it. Yeah. Should I say the name here?
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. But there was also another school of art illustration when I was in school at Art Center that was really primitive. And it's going to sound weird for me saying that because my style has gone to a primitive, almost decorative kind of style. But this, when I'm saying primitive, I mean like to make it look like you really can't draw and paint, like you have no training. And I actively steered away from that look. And there was a lot of illustrators that followed those illustrators, and they have had a mixture of success or whatever in their careers. And there's a very editorial kind of look that was out in the early 2000s. And but I hated that style and I didn't like it. I didn't think it was that interesting. It seemed to be really focused on pop culture and stuff. I didn't have no interest in that. Yeah. And so I steered away from it. So even at Art Center, I had to, find my heroes but again, you want to be open-minded. Like, wait, I don't want to discount somebody because it's different than I want to. So it's a real balancing act on what you bring in and what you reject. And maybe you make some wrong decisions too during the path. Like if I could change anything about those years when I was in school, you want to know the 2 classes I didn't take out of all that? Children's book illustration. Marla Frazee was the teacher.
That's
a
amazing.
fantastic, great teacher. And there was 2 children's book classes. Never took those. I was taking the most random classes that you've ever seen in life with the electives and stuff. Never took the children's book class. So dumb. But I will share this one little thing. My favorite.
Wait, before you do, was that because you didn't see yourself wanting to illustrate children's books and you found?
No, I was totally into children. When I look back on it, I have no idea what I was thinking. Like, was I just planning on taking it later? I don't know why.
That is amazing. Yeah. Imagine how good you'd be now.
I would have saved myself probably 5 years of effort. I don't know why I didn't take it. I mean, Marla's fantastic. And it's just such a dumb decision. But I remember one class to show you how open the assignments were there. They would open up a map of LA. This is the first day of class. And you got like a dart, or I can't remember, something we would somehow throw at the map. And wherever your little thing landed, you had to basically illustrate something about that spot for the whole term. It was a semester-long project. And and it was sort of a team-based project. It was really weird. But anyway, my little dart landed on like West Hollywood area, really over the top area if you've been to LA. But you can picture it. I mean, everybody knows what Hollywood is sort of about. And there was nothing that what I was interested in. So I was like, okay, how do I weave this into what I'm going to do? And so I decided to make a book. It was going to be a series of paintings, and all the paintings are sort of going to be over the top, glitzy. So I did this series of paintings, and I made the book almost into a costume, kind of like couture kind of a book. It had feathers coming off of it and stuff. It really just over the top. And because I've made my list of keywords like I always do for all my book projects, and driving and cars are a big part of LA culture. So I was like, I got to weave that in there. And I did a couple paintings of cars, and I was like, God, it's just not coming across. And so I actually made the book a drivable remote control book. And for the final, I drove my book's missing, and I just have a little placeholder with my name there. And they're like, Lee, where's your book? And I was like, hold on. And I drove the book into class. It was one of my favorite. The teacher said it was too over the top, but I thought that was the ultimate compliment. Yeah. Because that's what I was going for. It was over the top, but it was cool. A drivable little book, and I'd drive it around the hallways and stuff. Anyway, whatever. I don't know why I'm telling that story.
That's awesome. No, I love it. I love it. And you gotta, I think too, like, to separate yourself from the students in art school, if there's anything you can do to like think outside of what the teacher's expecting, what the other students are expecting, that's going to push you. And it's really I think it's that sort of X factor that an art director or an editor looks for, of why they pick you instead of someone else. And it may not be a remote control car thing. Like, I don't know how that translates to publishing, but that kind of thinking makes you the person that they see some elements in your portfolio, and they think, oh, this person's going to give us, something special. It's true. You do got to think that. I'll give one more story. When I just graduated from college, I had been to New York on just a kind of R&D trip. I wasn't meeting editors and art directors yet or whatever, but I did see one of the drop-off days they were having at, Simon & Schuster, or one of those Penguin Putnam. They used to do these drop-off days where everybody would drop off their portfolios. So I went into the lobby where that was happening, and it was a sea of those black portfolios. I mean, it was 300 black portfolios. Yeah. And so I came away with the idea that my portfolio is not going to be black. It's not going to be one of those zipper ones. And I should run upstairs and grab it, because I have it. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can see some of this stuff I'm going to show you guys. Yeah. But it was this custom made picture window box. It opened up. It was glass even. And I handmade a book insert that goes in there. And when I walked, so I dropped it off, and I got all these great notes about not only the work, but also this really random sort of special object. Yeah. And it made a huge, and when I walk in, I'd see all these portfolios, and I'd be like, there's mine. I mean, I could walk in 300 portfolios and just walk right up to mine and get it. Yeah. And it's that kind of thinking, I think, that permeates everything you do. If you're building a portfolio, or if you're doing a Kickstarter project, how does this stand out from the sea of other stuff that's happening? Mm-hmm. I think that can also bite you in the butt, though, sometimes too, when you when
go too far.
You can go too far. You can make yourself unhireable.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's a balancing act. Did I go
Right.
too far and alienate myself?
And if the work doesn't match the presentation, or if the presentation outshines the work,
right?
What's the purpose of it? And the first thing is having great work.
Right.
Are you guys? You guys banter? I'll go grab it and I'll show you.
Well, and I did the same thing, Jake, as I was sending out portfolios early on. And this is back when we sent out portfolios. So this is kind of, it doesn't really relate to today,
right?
But it does in principle. But I was sending out portfolios in one of those cheap little office staples, plastic binders, because it fit my theory was, well, it fits in a FedEx envelope so easily,
Yeah.
And then I got a client that luckily kind of put their arm around me and was like, hey, so you didn't get picked. Might I suggest that you do something? Your work is great. Do something special, because look at, and then she showed me what the other stuff that she was getting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm looking bad based on the clothes that I'm wearing. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
You're
I can do the work.
Well.
Yeah. And so I had these custom boxes made by a guy named George Barnhill. I doubt he's listening, but he's a high-end frame. He makes these frame profiles that are, gilded. He's very, very high-end stuff, but he made these boxes and they were just, and then I started getting all these compliments, and my the amount of jobs that I was getting percentage went up, so, and I think it says a lot about you if you're willing to, it's just a reflection on, they're going to treat my project really well because they've treated their own work really well.
Right. Yeah.
That the translation there would be on your website today.
Right. Like, I know so many artists who don't have a website. They're just like, go check out my Instagram account. That stuff looks amazing.
Well, he's got to talk. I think he has to talk for him to be big on YouTube.
I have it set to all three of it, to gallery views.
Oh, okay.
To be able to see all three of us.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll say so. So this is sort of, if you guys go to the YouTube channel, but it's this picture box case that I had modified the whole inside, and then I made this this insert and this handmade book, and then it had a little spot with little holders for postcards and business cards. It was just a series of projects. It's funny, as I look through it, it's not a great portfolio because some of the stuff was illustration based and children's book stuff. Some of the stuff was other projects that I did, like this one here. I did a whole series of people who set stupid world records. Oh yeah. And it was just a series of portraits, and it was a gallery.
I got to call you out. That's a Joe Soren.
Oh, it's totally Joe Soren. When you're going through school, same with some of these marks here, even though this one's like a combination of Lane Smith and Joe Soren. The kind of the brush marks and stuff like that. As you come out of school, a lot of times you're going to be the combination of your heroes,
Right. Yeah.
And that's
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. 2 years earlier, I had never drawn anything. So to have like a mature style coming out, you can't.
Right.
And so, but anyway, so I was carrying these. I brought like 5 of these heavy, crazy, breakable portfolios to New York. And, but they got a great result. It really paid off. I'm on the subway carrying all these things.
Yeah. Nobody even notices on the subway. Like, just
I don't care. Yeah.
Another guy doing his thing. They get to work.
Did you make those yourself, Lee?
I modified them from, originally they were made as I don't know what you call them, they'd hang on your wall and it'd be like a picture, a frame that you put like a flag in, or like a deeper
right, yeah.
picture frame. I don't know what those are called.
It's like a window frame or
some sort of
box.
like a case.
Yeah, like a case, but
like
it's meant to be hung on the wall, a display case. And so I just modified it to fit my needs.
Yeah, that looks cool. All right, should we move on to the next question? This comes from Krish. Is it too dangerous to watch TV for inspiration? That's an interesting question. Hey there, absolutely love you guys' work. Thank you so much for everything you do. I've always wondered about media and entertainment, and if it's a good source for inspiration for illustrators. So instead of, I guess, finding illustration or inspiration through other illustrations and other books, can you find inspiration through video games, TV, stuff like that? He says, I remember Jake discussing using films and video games as a mode of study and inspiration for art, but I often find myself getting distracted and forgetting what I'm doing is work, not play. Is there a way I can use films, video games, and TV shows to gain inspiration for story, color schemes, and design? Or is it not really worth it? If there's time, maybe even a comparison of art books to entertainment media would be great. Thank you so much. So the question there is like, can you get sucked into something that you're watching and end up binging, 24 episodes of something when all you really needed was 2 episodes to get the inspiration that you need? And I think my answer there is set aside a time for fun entertainment, for relaxing entertainment and like unwinding and refreshing yourself, and then set aside a time for studying entertainment, right? And what you do, and what you do with the studying one is, because you've already done your relaxing version of it, the studying one is you have notes in your hand, you have a book in your hand, so you could take notes, write down thoughts, write down impressions. If it's something where you do feel yourself getting carried away, write that down and be like, this is where I got lost into this and forgot that I was studying it and just wanted to watch what happened. And that's when you're really going to start to understand where the magic of some of this works. One thing you really need to look at too, I think, is consumption versus production, I guess. So I always like to think of it as like exhaling and inhaling. So exhaling is when you create. Inhaling is when you're getting inspiration, getting inspired. And if you're always just inhaling, eventually you get to the point where your lungs can't hold any more oxygen and you have to let it out, right? And if you're always just letting it out, blowing out the air, eventually you get to the point where there's nothing left in your lungs. You have to take a breath. And so finding a way that you can get that balance is what you're looking for here. So one of the problems, and I've had this problem with video games, is the inspiration you get from a video game versus the time investment is not, I don't think, equivalent to the inspiration you get from a film or maybe a book versus the time investment, depending on how fast of a reader you are. So I talked to some friends and they're like, oh yeah, I just finished this game. It was amazing. I'm like, that's really cool. That game does look amazing. How many hours did you put into it? Oh, like 40 hours. It's like a 40-hour game. And I'm just like, 40 hours, I could probably get everything I needed from it, inspiration wise, in, an afternoon, possibly. And so that's the danger. So the thing is set aside your time to play video games, right? So that it doesn't take away from your production time, but then make sure you also know what you're doing, so that you're recognizing like, okay, now I'm just playing because I have to beat this boss, not because I'm trying to find inspiration. And if video games do suck you in and it becomes like a time suck for you, where you're not getting productive work done because you're thinking about the video game, wanting to play the video game, then might I suggest YouTube videos of video game playthroughs. And you can have those playing while you're drawing, while you're working, and listening and looking over, when something interesting happens. That might be a good thing. But for the most part, think about when any time you're using and pulling these, think about what's the art direction here? Why did they choose to go realistic versus stylized? What's the color theory here? Do certain colors mean certain things in this story? When the color red shows up, does that mean something bad is going to happen? When the sky is gray, does that mean, does that reflect or mirror, what's happening in the story. Look at things like that. Ask why did the director choose this camera angle? All of these things you're asking yourself, why this character was chosen, why this actor was chosen to play this character. Why do we need this character in this movie? Motivations, all of those things, even in video games, because video games are becoming more storytelling based too. Those are going to help you when you're creating your own stories and writing your own stories. Visually, that's going to help you when you sit down to do a children's book. You can definitely pull those things from inspiration, but you have to go into it like eyes wide open, knowing, hey, I'm doing this for reference and study, and separating. We're just being careful about separating those two. What do you guys think?
Well, as far as what I hear in this question more is, how do I avoid procrastination? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if but that's what I'm reading between the lines, and I could be off. But yeah, I had a friend once who started a business, and it wasn't an illustration business. It was a logo business,
logo design.
Yeah. And what he did was he one day just decided he also didn't have the credentials to do it. So, so the way that I look at it is he went out and he spent about $3,000 or $4,000 getting office equipment. He just had fun for like 2 weeks setting up this office and making it perfect and doing everything except the thing that he was going to be in business to do.
Putting together a logo portfolio.
Yeah. And so anyway, the point there is that there's a reason why we procrastinate. Mm-hmm. There's usually an underlying reason. And so I would say if you're getting sucked into a game or into a show, any kind of a show, it's because you'd rather do that than the thing that you set out to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to turn. And one thing that I can say as far as creation goes is there's that time in the beginning when you're learning your craft and you're not sure whether or not a piece is going to turn out. Mm-hmm. And then you get to, and this is sometimes many years, in my case, it was many years, to where I can't wait to get started on a piece because I know it's going to turn out and it's fun and I can make this thing, and I don't procrastinate. I carve out time. In fact, with all the work that we're doing, that's, ancillary to children's books, sometimes, and we've all three complained about this, we can't wait to carve out time just to draw and paint again.
Right.
We were talking about that yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think that, it's going to be different for every single person as far as like when you find yourself rather doing something else. Sometimes it's the assignment that you got that you don't really like. And that's a problem for illustrators in general, is sometimes we get given this assignment and we take it more for the money than for the love of it. Mm-hmm. Then we have to figure out how to get it done because we don't really want to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that all this stuff has given us, games and easy access to entertainment, is, we're using a lot of analogies during this episode for some reason, but I think the mind is sort of like water. Water takes the path of least resistance, right? Mm-hmm. There's always a part in a project that's hard, and games are so easy. They're right there, and I think we've set up a world that's hard to go to the hard thing when the easy stuff is just a click away. It's part of our system. I'm drawing in Photoshop, and literally part of the same system is the huge internet and these games, and it's a very small divide between those, and it's easy to drift off. So you do got to be careful with having access to that. I will say that there's a technique that I push for all this kind of stuff, and that is kind of like what Jake said in terms of realize what you're doing first. Like if I'm gonna study this game for, that's a really generic thing to say, and that's going to lead, I think, to a hard to define success. If you're just like, I'm looking at the game and I want some kind of inspiration from it. That's so vague. But if you said, I'm looking at this game because I'm going to study specifically the character design silhouettes. I mean, hear how different that is. And all of a sudden now there's parameters around it and you're looking for, in one of my concept design classes, we studied The Shining, the movie, The Shining. And the whole movie, we had these acetates, we play it, and then I'd put an acetate on the screen, and in Sharpie, I would draw the compositions over the frame, the paused frame. Super active learning versus, hey, let's watch The Shining and hope some composition rubs off on us.
Right. Right.
So being really specific about what you need. Are you studying color palettes? Are you studying composition? Are you studying character design? And as long as you set up that parameter and that kind of framework, then you'll be getting active research versus passive consumption.
Right. The other thing I would add too is anytime, if it's storytelling or art direction or anything that you're wanting to pull from this, watch the director's commentary for films, because you're going to get so much added insight to decision making, why a certain thing was shot that way, how something was done, and that's going to spark more ideas and help things out. The other thing too is we talk about or you mentioned in the question, art books, the art of for pretty much any video game or any animated show or film or CG heavy effects film has these art books where it goes in behind the scenes and shows you the character designs, the environment designs, the color scripts, all the little iterations that went into making those. And sometimes that can satisfy the needs versus actually purchasing the game and playing it through. Just getting the art book can give you all the inspiration that you might need. I think if you're making video games, you probably should be playing video games. But if you're using video games as inspiration for other media, maybe you just need the art book. And then the last thing I like to think about is there's so much media today. Do not feel obligated to watch it all. You don't have to. You can miss, like, I cannot tell you how many TV shows I haven't watched that I should have watched. like I haven't seen Game of Thrones. I haven't seen Stranger Things. I haven't, all these things that should be right up my alley that I just haven't taken the time to sit through and see all of them. And it's because I kind of I want to look back at the last year or the last 10 years and, hold out my hands and count more projects that I finished than shows that I watched, and this is coming from a guy who has a wife, has kids, has other responsibilities. So my time is somewhat limited for entertainment and for, and watching stuff. So I have to be very judicious and I only have, Saturday night, Friday night, or certain few hours in a week. What is it going to be that I'm going to watch that's going to give me the most bang for my buck? If you're, responsibility free, knock yourself out, absorb as much as you can. But if there are, limitations to how much time you can devote for that, you do have to be picky. And, in a 40-hour, if I had to decide between, 40 hours of film watching or a comic, a short comic story that I could finish and put out there, I think I'd rather have the comic than watching, 20 different movies. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I add one little thing. This is going to be a moment of honesty here. Mm-hmm. Moments of honesty. We need a little graphic
first,
for that.
You guys, listen up here.
Listen up. There's never a time I feel more insecure about my art than when I open a new art of book for a game or a movie. They're so good. I mean, and it's a combination of 100 artists, and it's all of their best work, and they're just so amazing. And what I like about them is it's just the throwaway sketches. I mean, I like that quick, their little quick take on a character doing something might be just the most beautiful, shockingly beautiful little moment, better than the film or, like whatever the finished thing was. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just got to get myself in a space. And I'm inspired by it too, but it's just like, wow. So there's some really good people out there.
So that leads me to another thing that I'm dealing with. And that is, I want to make great children's books. I want to make great comic books and graphic novels. I want to put out some good stuff. And I've tried to do it in the past, and I'm, trying to do it in the future. But what frustrates me and what kind of gives me a little bit of like creative anxiety is I'm one person. And if I hire assistants to help me out, it's this very small team, but essentially I'm the creative force driving this project versus, have you ever watched the credits at the end of an Avengers movie? Thousands of brilliant minds working together to create this world. And I'm like, how can I even compete? What can I possibly offer that could be better than, what this collaboration of 1,000 people, has put out there. So that's something that I struggle with. It's like, I just chalk it up to like, try to make something that they can't make or wouldn't make, and find that audience that will like your particular voice and your particular story that you're trying to tell, and hope that, you really can't compete on that level. I mean, I'm not expecting to make, 20 million on an opening weekend of a graphic novel. I'm still or 200 million, however much those make. But so I don't, but I would like to compete on maybe 2,000 people would back a Kickstarter. That would be phenomenal. That would just...
Well, what you're talking about always frustrates me too when they make a bad decision in a movie. I'm like, all these people that worked on this movie and nobody saw this little moment.
That's true.
That should have been better.
That's the flip side of that. Like
come on, did nobody screen it? What happened?
Right. And usually some of those come down to, after working in animation at an animation studio for several years. I was 12 years in different animation studios. And it really comes down to one executive saying, we need a fart joke right here. Huh. And you're like, oh, geez.
No.
It may not be that exact, but the equivalent of something like that, right?
Yeah, somebody always has to make the final call, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, next question. Or did we kill that question? You guys?
I think we've answered it, but how far are we going? I don't know. It seems
one more.
We're a little long-winded today. Sorry, you guys.
No, it's all right. You got something on your lips.
Oh, it's ink because I'm drawing. I just realized I was like I doodle. Hold on, I doodle, and then hold on, I'll show you the thing if I can find my screen.
I'm just glad it wasn't a booger.
I doodle. So all these little things, I just make these patterns, and this is on a form from the IRS. I gotta turn this.
I'm sitting here and I'm going, how did I not notice that before? He's got a cold
it's
sore.
like a perfect Hitler.
I thought
and a mustache. It's ink.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Hey, we're wearing the same shirt.
I know. Will didn't get the memo. We're in the SVS Rabbit shirt.
All right. This comes from Mike. This was actually a question from the YouTube channel. So I guess Daniel sent it to us, our producer. So I guess ask a question on the YouTube channel in the comments and maybe it'll show up in the podcast. So he says, hi, SVS. I have a question. If you have time for it, if it fits into a podcast. I guess we're fitting it into a podcast. So here we go. I'm a beginner learning the basics right now. I recently was giving a painting class for a gift. I loved the painting class and formulated this question. As a beginner drawer, should I attempt to start learning painting skills at the same time or wait till I get to a certain level of proficiency in drawing? If so, what level of drawing should I wait to get before embarking on learning the fundamentals of painting? Thank you for your awesome podcast. You're so helpful to a beginner like myself. So I'm not much of a painter, so let's hear from you guys. Will?
I have an analogy for this one that I've been waiting. I've been waiting to pull this out. I've been waiting to rip this out.
And elephants, right? So I don't know. Go for it.
And this is coming from someone who put the cart before the horse. Who had to learn the wrong way, right? See, I'm sliding another analogy in there.
Just keep doing the metaphors.
I will do it. So would you get all the building materials for a house, get the drywall and everything, and then paint each individual piece of drywall first, and then build the house? Or would you build the house and then paint it? And that's really where it comes down to is painting's fun.
I would paint the individual things and build the house. Is that the right answer?
That's the right answer, Lee.
Paint all the 2x4s, then put the sheetrock on top of them.
I mean, I thought, and I've talked about this so many times on here, that I always think people are sick of hearing the same things. But I mean, I fell in love with painting and making, and color and moving paint around and getting good color combinations. I probably could have done pretty well just going right into abstract painting, if I had learned some good design skills, and had a career with that. But if you're going to be an illustrator, you've got to learn to draw. And, you can try what I did, which was to say, oh, the style I'm going for doesn't require great drawing skills. And that's what makes my style unique. The fact that I can't draw and, and celebrate that until it doesn't work. And then you have to go back to the basics and learn it. Basically, like the first question was, how do I accelerate my time to becoming a professional? Well, that's one way to decelerate it is to not learn to draw first. So unfortunately,
right, this is where we're going to argue. Because I don't agree with that. I think they should be approached simultaneously. They're different skill sets. And I think at a certain point they'll blend. I guess what I really want to highlight there is don't just eat the vegetables without ever having the dessert. If you want to paint and learn to draw too. I mean, that's kind of where painting always came more naturally to me, still does, than drawing. I had to actively work at drawing and still do. But I would have hated it if somebody said, okay, you got this skill set and natural kind of inclination to paint. Now just don't do that for 2 years. Stay over here and just do line work. I would have been absolutely miserable. So,
well, I'm not suggesting that we become, fanatical about not painting either, because I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have ignored painting for years while I worked. Okay,
I just don't want anybody to take.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting
put away
that.
The paint supplies, and don't think painting is not drawing. By the way, it's
you could draw.
You are still drawing when you're painting.
In fact, if you take oil painting classes, a lot of times the teachers will. They want you to block in and draw with the paintbrush and not use a pencil or something to start out with.
I wish more illustration. Sorry, Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I had a teacher that was teaching portraits, and that's what the approach was. Is you go in and you block everything in with the paintbrush, and you just build up that portrait from with pure paint. But there's a very much a drawing stage before the painting stage there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to recommend a book. If anybody else falls in this boat, like with me, that paint a little bit more naturally than they draw. There's a book called Drawing with the Broad Side of the Pencil. And it is just where you're holding the pencil sort of sideways and you're almost painting with the pencil instead of everything just being a line. And man, when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that can be drawing. It's not everything, single thing kind of lined out. Mm-hmm. And it was a game changer, and it's gorgeous. Those pencil drawings, they look like watercolor paintings to me. It was a perfect setup. And I'm surprised more teachers don't teach a tonal approach to drawing instead of everything sort of being line based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I will say the flip side is, if I've had a lot of students who were really good at drawing, and when we got to painting class, they were just too afraid to let go. Mm-hmm. And the challenge that I had with them was saying, like, I need you to mess up. Mm-hmm. You're not in this sterile environment where you have total control with the point of the pencil anymore. And I think that's what you're talking about on the side of the pencil, draw, or the side of the chalk, and how you hold it. Right. But using a paintbrush, I would ask some of my students to use a paintbrush 2 or 3 times as wide as they want it. Like, which one are you comfortable with right now? Okay, I'm going to 3 times that. And now you're painting with this huge thing, and they hate it. And the problem when they hate it is they don't understand what I'm trying to do. The challenge for you as a student, if you want to accelerate, is try to figure out why the teacher's trying to make you do something uncomfortable. If you can figure that out, you're going to learn so much faster. And the thing you have to embrace is that learning shouldn't be comfortable. It should be frustrating, and it should be foreign. And and that's when you know that you're learning something. If you're in your comfort zone, you don't need school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if this analogy applies or this metaphor applies, but I was thinking about this the other day. I was on a run. I was thinking about, like, you've got penguins, you've got ducks, and you've got like eagles. They're all three birds, right? But what does a penguin do? Cannot fly. It jumps off a cliff and it will die. However, it can swim so well that it can like rocket itself out of the water up onto a rock, like from the water. I don't know any other bird that can do that.
Right.
You have eagles that can, there's these falcons that can go 200 miles per hour, right, in a dive. And they're expert killers. But if you've ever seen an eagle in the water, they've drowned. They've been known to drown if their wings get too wet. And then you've got ducks who are like, yeah, I can fly. Yeah, I can swim. Yeah, I can even walk on land. Like, I totally got this, right? But they're not the best swimmers. They're not the best walkers. They're okay flyers. I mean, they're not, they're not chasing down prey. They're just getting from point A to point B. And so I think you just got to find what your strengths are as a person and embrace it. Are you a penguin? If you're a penguin, don't look up at the eagles and be like wishing you were that. Just embrace it. I'm going to swim in the water. And I sort of feel like I'm this duck where I could do a bunch of things good enough. And I'm not a great painter. I know people who draw way better than me, but I can draw and add color and make something that comes together pretty well. There's a storytelling element to it and things like that. So I don't know if that helps.
I like it. Did you just come up with the bird analogy?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, I was looking at ducks the other day thinking that's so cool that a duck.
You're not an eagle.
A duck can do three different things,
I don't know though. You can't just sit back though and say I'm a penguin, so I don't need to train these other things. I mean, that's so. If I just rested in my comfort zone, I would never ever have learned to draw well.
Yeah, but I think you're saying lean into it, like Jake, you're more of a drawer than a painter, so your art reflects really good drawing always,
right?
And good paint, and sometimes and your paint is better than most. I mean, it's very professional, but it's not painterly.
Right.
Right. And so and you're not trying to be, and neither, and a sergeant doesn't look like a drawing, it looks painterly,
Right.
So
right.
I think you're saying that, lean into the type of thing. I lean into color.
Yeah. I would say learn the thing you got to learn to make the thing that you love to do the best it can be. How's that?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
And you just brought up something, Lee. When did you buy your domain name? How long ago? How many years ago? Was it like right out of college? Right out of college, yeah. Okay. I'm sure you could have gotten painterlee.com.
Oh.
I'm just thinking that is a squandered opportunity.
Lee.
Especially with the way that I think, golly, that should have
been. Lee, I'm looking right now.
It's a wasted dad joke.
I'm going to buy it. If it's not available, I'm going to buy it and sell it to Lee.
painterlee.com. Instead, Lee White Illustration.com.
Do you know how many times now I fast forward, I buy the domain name in, 2002, 2003. Yeah. Fast forward to 2020, 2021. And now I'm having to enter that with a remote control to get into my Netflix account. It is the worst.
LeeWhiteIllustration.com. We looked everywhere for this page. It's not available. Painterlee.
It is.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, we've looked. They can't find it. It's available.
We'll buy it and then hold it hostage. And
I already bought it.
Okay, good.
I'll
give you $10 million for that.
No, he wants Bitcoin. Just one Bitcoin.
Just one
You're
piece
luck,
of the old Bitcoin.
I came up with my own fake computer coins. They're worth 5 million a piece.
Actually, you know what? That's another idea. Can we end with this? With this? Okay. It goes back to the blockchain NFT thing. Okay. Here's an idea. At some point, what if when you followed someone like on Instagram or any social media, what if that following was, in order to follow a person, you had to pay $1, right? And what that dollar got you was essentially an NFT of that person, right? So that person is like, maybe they have a limited 100,000, we'll call them Lee coins, 100,000 Lee coins available. And so you want to follow Lee as the artist, you could buy one Lee coin for $1, and all your other fans could buy one Lee coin for $1. You could buy up the rest of the Lee coins, 50,000 of them, keep them or whatever. You could destroy half of them, whatever. But anyways, you set a limit to them. And then as your work progresses and as more people join the platform to follow you, if they want to buy a Lee coin, someone else has to sell part of their Lee coin or one of their Lee coins or something like that.
I've got a tagline for this, by the way. I don't want to forget it.
Uh-huh.
It's the tagline for the Lee coin site. $1afaller.com.
It's already in a bubble. Lee coins are in a bubble. It's going to crash.
$1 you guys. $1afaller.com.
We're sorry for ending the podcast on this, you guys.
No, okay. We'll end up one more thing. Speaking of domain names, and I do appreciate Lee's advice. I bought a second domain name, jakeparkerart.com, because I wanted a website. I wanted Mr. Jake Parker to remain the catch-all. It's got my blog. It's got my tools that I use. It's got every single project I've ever done on it. But I wanted a website where it was just a wall of art and very little else. And so I went to Lee and I'm like, should it be Jake Parker Illustration? Should it be Jake Parker Art? Should it be Art by Jake? What do you guys think? And he's like, do not do Jake Parker Illustration. You will hate yourself. You'll have to type that thing in every time. Like, don't do it. So I appreciate that. I landed on jakeparkerart.com. So you guys can go check that out if you want.
Way better.
But yeah. So thank you for the advice. All right. Should we take us out? Should I take us out?
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you for asking those questions. I think it sparks a really good conversation. Hopefully somebody walked away with some useful information from this episode. I just want to let you know the 3-point perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. I also want to direct you to childrensbookpro.com, where we're working on a cool course teaching people how to do children's books. So I would go check that out as well. Lee also has a project that he's been working on. So if you go to his website, leewhiteillustration.com, he's announcing his next Kickstarter project, which is coming down the pipeline. So you can go there, click on the link, get signed up for updates on that to be there when it launches. So it's the tarot deck, right?
Tarot deck, yep.
Yeah. So you should see the illustrations he's posting for that. Really amazing stuff. It's looking good. He's posting those over at Instagram at Lee White Illo. Will Terry, go follow him at Will Terry Art on Instagram. Will Terry Art on Instagram, and you can see his website at willterry.com. And then check my stuff out at jakeparkerart.com or mrjakeparker.com, whatever toots your whistle. And follow me on Instagram at Jake Parker if you're not doing that already. Podcast is edited, produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. And you can find his work at daniel2.co. Special thanks to our SVS production manager, David Bro, who kind of keeps everything running smoothly here. And a big thank you, shout out to our social media specialist, Lisa Fott, for all the work that she does. And we're grateful for the rest of the SVS team. I think that's it. We'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for joining us.